Hereditary is directed by Ari Aster in his feature film debut. He had directed some shorts before this. I wasn't necessarily familiar with him, but you know what? That might actually be a good thing. A lot of times, directorial debuts, in horror movies in particular, can make or break a director. And he knocked it out of the park here. I wasn't sure necessarily, based on the advertising, scariest film since The Exorcist. I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to say that right now. And I'm not going to get into spoilers yet. I will tell you when I'm going to get into spoilers, and that way you guys can figure out my opinions on certain things in the movie without spoiling. And then I'll say about spoilers, and then you guys can go on and watch the movie. And then come back to my review and see if you guys agreed with it or not. If you guys enjoyed The Witch, and if you guys enjoy slow burn horror movies that have a payoff, that do some stuff and then really ramp things up, not even in the last 15 minutes. I'm not talking like a Paranormal Activity thing, but where things really ramp up and they build and build and build to some big crescendo, then yes, you will enjoy this movie. And I enjoyed this movie. I did enjoy this movie very much. Toni Collette is a tour de force in this movie. She plays the mother, Annie, who's dealing with the loss of her mother. Gabriel Byrne, in particular, was good in this too. He played the husband, Steve. You have a couple young actors. Millie Shapiro, who played Charlie. I'm looking at my notes, by the way, just in case you're wondering. Alex Wolff, who played Peter, the older brother. And there's one particular actress who played a character, Joan, named Ann Dowd. And she's been in some stuff. I recognized her. But I can't necessarily think of where I recognize her from. But she's been in various supporting parts and bit parts and stuff like that. And I've always thought she was pretty good in the movies I remember her being. And even if I can't recall some right now, I remember actually her being pretty good in some of that stuff. But the thing about this movie is it centers on Annie, who does miniature work, makes miniature houses, miniature rooms, and that kind of stuff, and shows them at art galleries and stuff like that, I believe. I mean, you never see her go to an art gallery and any of that stuff, but it is implied that she shows her stuff at art galleries, and she's apparently really, really good at it. She is really good at it. She puts a lot of detail and a lot of work into the stuff. And a lot of it starts to reflect stuff that's going on in the movie and stuff that's going on in her life. And one of the things that is a theme that sticks out for me and keeps haunting throughout the entire movie and really, really sticks true is Annie talks about her mother and says, my mother had was a very private person and had a lot of secrets. And that's the kind of hook, actually, that it sets the theme throughout the entire movie. There's a lot of secrets that get revealed. We're okay, yeah, is it hokey? Yeah, with this kind of theme in a horror movie, it can be a little bit hokey. But the way a lot of it was presented was actually very almost old school horror movie. I mean, when they say it was the scariest movie since The Exorcist, I didn't really, unpopular opinion, didn't really care for The Exorcist. I get why people liked it. I mean, at the time, it was certainly revolutionary, but I don't know. I just, even when I was like in my single digits, of age, I watched it. I think I watched it like age 8 or 9, and I was like, I wasn't very scared. And I hadn't watched a lot of horror movies. Like, I wasn't really all that scared by it. But, there are a ton of people that are, and that's okay. But with Hereditary, it did have some good scares to it. It did have some goofy scares, as you're going to get from a lot of movies like this. But the way they built it, they really centered it around this family. And the grief that they're dealing with after, Annie losing her mother, the kids losing their grandmother, especially Charlie, who's played by Millie, the girl that was in the trailer. She, in particular, was very, very close. The grandmother had really latched on to her and had kind of taken Charlie under her wing and raised her quite a bit, even at much to the chagrin of the mother, Annie. So that was kind of a theme that played throughout the movie also. It always seemed like, grandma, mother was looming over everybody. And just the way she had to have everything done her way, she was very, she was just very possessive, which actually kind of comes back to play in the movie a little bit later. Again, not spoiling, but just as far as like, possessiveness and that kind of stuff. It is a movie mostly about family at first. It does ramp things up about 35-40 minutes in, I believe. I didn't have my phone on, so I didn't keep track of the time codes and stuff like that. But a big thing happens. Again, not spoiling. Big thing happens that really rocks the family. Even more than the events that started, that set up, the whole thing about with the grandmother and stuff like that. A lot, that happens. And then that sets family just on a really, really dark path, as everybody was trying to deal with that, and then they got to deal with this, and it's really, really tough. One thing I really liked about this movie was a lot of the long shots of the hallways and the shots of the miniatures. There's this opening shot where it shows this entire room with all these miniatures, and then it zooms in on this one miniature that's pretty much like part of the house that they have. I mean, it's like the house they have, but it's like this one room in particular, and then that's where your film starts proper. There's a lot of really good usage with the miniatures and some good imagery as far as things that finally start occurring, and everything suddenly starts to make sense, and the more and more layers that Annie peels back for secrets that her mother held, the more things start to unravel and start to become horrifying, the more Annie starts to have issues. Annie doesn't want to put any stress in any more, emotional turmoil on her family. Unfortunately, as she finds out more about her mother and what her mother's life was like, that shit kind of starts to go down. It does get, there are a lot of scares and everything, or, horror and all that stuff towards the end. There is a lot of good stuff that happens, and yeah, you get some goofy stuff and everything, but and the ending's a little bit weird, I suppose, but it does make sense if you pay attention to the details. So that much I will say. I recommend you guys watch this movie and decide for yourself. It's one of those that's really hard to gauge if people are going to love or hate. I'm in the camp of where I'm close to loving it, but I certainly didn't hate it. I certainly did not like it. It was above average, so I will say that much. I liked it. It was enjoyable, and it had some really good performances, particularly Toni Collette. Toni Collette deserves an Oscar for this. That's just or she at least deserves an Oscar nomination, because I think Toni Collette was great. It reminds me, her character, the way it was a tormented mother, reminded me, her tormented character that happens to be a mother, reminded me a lot of the Babadook. If you've seen the Babadook, you'll get a bit of an idea of what Toni Collette's performance is a little bit like. But they're two totally different movies. And I really love the Babadook. That was great shit. It was marketed a little bit differently than I thought, but it was still really, really good. But anyway, back to Hereditary. I'm gonna get into spoilers now, so I'm just warning everybody. Gonna get into spoilers right here. So that's your warning. 3, 2, and 1. And here we go with the spoilers at about 8:30 in the review. I'm going to remember that so I can, put the time code in the description. Well, the thing I alluded to is after the grandma died and everything, what I alluded to, the big event that happened that really sent the family out of control. Yeah, the girl that chops off, at one point she chops off a pigeon's head, a pigeon that flew into the, into a school window. Yeah, Charlie dies after being at a party. What happens is, it turns out that Charlie's allergic to nuts. Annie asks, if Peter can take Charlie to the party that he's going to go to, where he's going to smoke weed and want to possibly bang a girl that's in his class. Okay, whatever, as you do. I mean, I'm sure that's what teenagers do these days. I don't know. I never went and smoked weed at parties. Sorry, I never went and did that shit. I didn't really like going to parties, honestly. But anyway, at one point he's like, hey, they're serving cake in there. Well, a little bit earlier, a girl's chopping nuts, walnuts or something like that. Well, since Charlie's allergic to nuts, she eats the cake. Well, she has an allergic reaction. Tries to drink water, maybe thinking it's something she ate, something weird or whatever. And she's suddenly gasping for breath and this kind of stuff. And he's just gotten high. And then she comes in, doesn't feel good, throws on fire. And being a good brother, I will say this. This is one thing I did like about it. You can tell that the family really care about each other. He takes her, and they're out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure what state this was filmed in, honestly. I want to say Arizona. Arizona or parts of California. It has that feel to it. It could be Idaho for all I know, honestly. I don't have a clue. I didn't look that up. But as Peter's driving along, Charlie rolls down the window because she's trying to get some air. She's trying to, he's like, don't worry, we're almost at the hospital. We're almost at the hospital. And she sticks her head out the window. He swerves to avoid this dead deer in the road or something. Suddenly there's this power pole. Boom! Her head hits. And I mean, this is like going like 70 miles an hour, so there ain't no way to do that. Well, her head gets taken clean off. And that's the big thing that happens, where obviously he's horrified. Now, how do you deal with grief? You can deal with grief one of three ways. You face it head on. You tell your parents. You sit there like in complete shock. Or you do what Peter did, and you go home with her body still in the car, and you go to bed. And then you let your mother find it. And that's what happens. And the mother finds that. And that was one where everybody deals with grief differently. I can only imagine what it would feel like if I had, if I had killed somebody, family member or otherwise, somebody that I deeply cared about. I had accidentally killed somebody not even intending to. Hence accident. Especially if it's a sibling. But just that was like, okay, God, that really sent Annie out of control. She was going to support group before this, and then later, it's like, so she's dealing with the grief. Peter's dealing with the grief. The dad's trying everything he can to make everything work. Peter probably shouldn't be in school because of the emotional grief he's going through. And yeah, losing a sibling would really, really do it. Well, then, as things go on, Annie tries to go back to support group, decides not to, gets talked to by this woman named Joan. And it's this woman that she develops a bit of a bond with, because Joan had lost her kid, or her grandson. So she says. What happens is, later, this kind of stuff, okay, you had Toni Collette's character had this really, really good piece of dialogue, like a bit of a monologue, where she just goes crazy because the son wants to know, like, why do you blame me, this kind of stuff. Or if you got something to say it. And she just goes off on this, I wish I could take away your pain, this kind of stuff, but just the way she's angry, I have slaved and everything for you, and all you do is give me that stupid, you sit there with that stupid face on your face, or something like that, which was a funny line. But as things keep going, as layers keep getting pulled back, bottom line what it is, it turns out that the grandmother, Annie's mother, was the leader of this kind of weird cult that worshipped the King of Mischief, they worship some demon. I mean, there's a few illusion, some alluding to, like the King of Mischief. Great riches will come your way, but a firstborn male has to die or be possessed. Kind of like in Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, if you remember that one at all. But this was done obviously better because it's not a Paranormal Activity movie. By the way, I like the Paranormal Activity movies for silliness, but they weren't the best. The first one was great. Fourth one had some moments. Actually, until actually about the fourth one, they weren't so bad. Then they got ridiculous. But anyway, back to Hereditary. You have that whole thing where Toni Collette has that monologue, and she throws a lot of emotional baggage at this woman, Joan. She finally goes to see Joan, who had given her number earlier. And the thing was, okay, let's see about, they deal with this grief, this kind of stuff. She hears all the stuff that happened and everything. And then later, after going to some supply store, Annie runs into Joan again. Joan's like, oh my God, I gotta tell you about something. Turns out that she was able to speak to a medium and speak to her grandson. So she takes and she takes Annie there, shows her some stuff, saying she was speaking to her grandson, move the glass, this kind of stuff, and those were pretty cool scenes. But then it's like, oh, Annie's going to try it. She wants to contact Charlie, wants to contact her dead daughter. Well, from there, shit really, really starts to go down. It turns out that Joan was just tricking her, and that it was just a way to get whatever was in Charlie, because you remember the grandma latched onto her and basically raised her. Grandma was indoctrinating her from a very early age. Charlie was already probably possessed when she died. You know, when the vessel was damaged. The spirit got released. The idea is it goes in the firstborn male. That would be Peter. Once it gets to like towards the end and everything, a lot of shit starts to go down. Like, there's some goofiness with an art book that Charlie had, where using it as a piece, like it's a memory that belonged to somebody. You know, that belonged to the person you're trying to contact. Well, once Annie realizes she made a mistake and she let some kind of demon into her house or some, kind of evil thing, all of a sudden, she tries to burn it and she catches on fire. Well, all the while, there's a bit of a secret that the husband character is holding. That he had gotten a call about the grandma's grave being desecrated. And basically sees later at his work, like an email, where somebody had stolen the body. I'm going to give you 3 guesses where the body is, but you're only going to need 1. The body's up in the attic. That would be the answer. But it all ties back to the house. And it all ties back to this ritual needing to happen where this demon, one of the demons of hell, kings of hell, I believe, are going to be, it's going to be put into Peter. But it's the way it's done. Suddenly everybody starts dying. Like, Gabriel Byrne's character dies. He gets burned. Literally. That's not a pun. He literally gets set on fire. Because Andy's like, I'm going to throw away this art book. And, oh God. Suddenly Gabriel Byrne catches on fire. And then the demon possesses her. And then there's some goofy stuff with like Toni Collette's character hanging on the wall, like almost Spider-Man-like or Spider-Girl-like. And basically by the end, Peter ends up getting possessed. There's a lot more to it, but I'm not going to spoil every single thing. But when shit really starts to go down, like right after Charlie dies, that's where things get good, but they also get weird. Now, it does take till about an hour in, maybe an hour and 5 minutes in, before things really start. Once Joan shows her about the whole thing about the seance and becoming a medium and contacting her grandson, and that she could contact her child when it's actually not the grandson that's being contacted, it's a demon. And that's why Annie ends up, bringing some demon in, because that's what was being foretold. And that's one of the secrets that her grandma had, is that, hey, this is how we were able to afford these riches. Your firstborn male is going to basically be sacrificed. That's pretty much what it is. At least that's what I got from it. I don't know. Maybe I read too much into it, but I really ended up enjoying Hereditary. So yeah, that's all I got to say there. So yeah, as I said, if you're watching this stuff right now and if you're upset, once I go to 8:30, if you're upset that there were any spoilers, well, I did everything I could for you. So yeah, it's a bit of a long review. I wanted to go into detail on some scenes I particularly appreciated, but there was a lot of good to it. Is it a perfect movie? No. But it has a lot of good to it. So I'm going to say B+. B+. I actually really enjoyed this movie. It's not as good as I enjoyed A Quiet Place just a little bit more. That's just me. But Hereditary gets a B+. It was really well done, and Toni Collette deserves an Oscar for this. So yeah, a bit of a long review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But again, if you were planning on watching it, of course by now, if you've gotten to this point, you've already seen it. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Anyway, do you agree? Do you disagree with what I said? If you've seen the movie, like, share, comment, subscribe. Twitter link in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin, my Hereditary review, and I will see you soon.